It was May 1915. Europe was at war. The trenches stretched across France. German submarines patrolled the North Atlantic. The British Admiralty had declared the waters around the United Kingdom a war zone. 3 years earlier, the Titanic had sunk after hitting an iceberg. That disaster had shocked the world. But this time, it wouldn't be nature, it would be war. The ocean liner RMS Lusitania was preparing to leave New York for Liverpool. She was one of the largest and fastest ships in the world, 787 feet long, 31,000 tons, powered by turbine engines that could reach 25 knots. Built by the Cunard Line, she carried four massive funnels and the reputation of being too fast to catch, too strong to sink. Her passengers included 1,257 travelers and 700 crew members, a total of 1,959 people. Among them were 128 Americans, dozens of children, and several families returning to Europe. The ship's captain was William Turner, 58 years old, experienced and respected. He had crossed the Atlantic more than 200 times. His orders were to follow standard routes, avoid known U-boat positions, and keep the British flag high. On the morning of May 1st, Lusitania prepared to sail from Pier 54, New York. The weather was clear. The ship's horn sounded across the Hudson. At the same time, an unusual notice appeared in American newspapers, an official warning from the Imperial German Embassy. It stated that any vessel flying the flag of Great Britain or her allies entering the war zone around the British Isles is liable to destruction. Passengers read it while boarding. Most dismissed it. Some joked that no submarine could threaten a liner this size. At 12:20 p.m., Lusitania departed New York Harbor. The last photograph of her alive shows her moving down the Hudson River, smoke pouring from all four funnels. Lusitania was designed both as a passenger liner and as an auxiliary cruiser in case of war. Her hull was double-layered, and she carried space for light armament. When she sailed in 1915, her lower holds contained mixed cargo rifle cartridges, shell casings, and gun cotton, officially labeled general merchandise. The German Navy already knew it. U-boats operating off the Irish coast had orders to attack armed merchant ships. One of them was U-20, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Walter Schwieger, 30 years old, a veteran of submarine patrols. His submarine was 65 meters long, armed with 6 torpedo tubes and carrying 7 live torpedoes. By early May, U-20 had already sunk 3 ships near Ireland. Schwieger's log recorded his intent to move south into the main shipping lane. The very corridor the Lusitania was expected to enter. The line across the Atlantic reduced speed, 21 knots instead of 25, to save coal. The Admiralty had not provided a destroyer escort. Captain Turner was told that patrol coverage was adequate. In reality, it was not. By May 6th, the ship was approaching the south coast of Ireland. Visibility was clear. Passengers crowded the deck to watch the green cliffs on the horizon. At the same time, U-20 surfaced 20 miles away. Its crew reloaded torpedo tube number 2 and began tracking the liner's position through the periscope. The next day, the two vessels would meet. On May 7, 1915, RMS Lusitania was moving northeast along the southern coast of Ireland, roughly 11 miles off Old Head of Kinsale. Weather, clear. Visibility, excellent. The ship maintained a course of S87E at about 18 knots. At 1:20 p.m., German submarine U-20 spotted the liner through its periscope. Commander Walter Schwieger recorded in his log, "Large steamer with 4 funnels and 2 masts, appears armed." At 10 p.m., he ordered 1 torpedo fired from tube number 2 at a distance of 700 meters. 30 seconds later, a single explosion struck Lusitania on her starboard side, beneath the bridge. A second, much larger detonation followed almost instantly. The cause remains disputed. Survivors describe the sound as a heavy shock. Then a deep roar. Many were thrown from their chairs. Lights flickered. Steam pipes burst. Within moments, the liner began to list to starboard at 15 degrees. Captain Turner ordered the helm hard over and the engines stopped. The ship was taking water faster than any crew could control. The time between impact and total loss was 18 minutes. At 12 p.m., the engine rooms flooded. Electrical power failed, leaving the ship without communications. The SOS message was transmitted briefly before the wireless room went dark. Lifeboat launching was chaotic. Because of the list, most boats on the starboard side hung high above the water. Those on the port side swung inward, crushing passengers against the hull. Out of 48 boats, fewer than 6 were launched successfully. Many overturned in the water. Witnesses later reported that the sea surface was covered with debris, life jackets, and people calling for help. At 28 p.m., the ship's bow dipped, her stern rose sharply, and she vanished beneath the surface. The position recorded 5,125 and 833 W. Depth about 93 meters. Out of 1,959 people, 1,198 died. Among them were 94 children and 31 infants. U-20 remained at periscope depth for another 10 minutes. Schweiger noted in his log, "The ship sinks too quickly. Many boats are in the water. I cannot fire again. It would be murder." Then he ordered the submarine to dive and leave the area. The first distress signal was received at 14 p.m., minutes after impact. The message reached the British Admiralty, but no rescue ships were immediately dispatched. Nearby naval vessels were ordered to maintain their positions. Commanders feared a second submarine attack. Local fishing boats from Queenstown, now Cobh, were the first to respond. They arrived more than 3 hours later. By then, the wreck had already settled on the seabed. Survivors were scattered across several miles of open water, clinging to debris or overturned lifeboats. The rescue operation lasted through the night. In total, 764 people were pulled from the sea, many unconscious, some severely burned by steam or oil. The dead were brought to makeshift morgues in Queenstown. Rows of bodies covered the quayside, their belongings laid beside them for identification. The youngest victim recovered was a 6-month-old infant. News of the sinking reached London within hours. The initial report stated that Lusitania had struck a mine. Within a day, the truth emerged. She had been torpedoed by a German U-boat. In New York, crowds gathered outside the Cunard offices. Lists of survivors were posted on the windows. The American press called it an act of murder at sea. President Woodrow Wilson demanded an explanation that stopped short of declaring war. The German government justified the attack, claiming the liner was carrying war materials. Britain denied it. But records later confirmed that Lusitania's cargo included over 170 tons of rifle ammunition and shell casings. This evidence, kept secret for decades, would later reignite debate about whether the ship had been used as a civilian cover for military transport. Public anger grew on both sides. In Britain, newspapers printed headlines reading "Nitrogen monoxide warning," "Nitrogen monoxide mercy." Posters appeared showing drowned mothers and children, urging young men to enlist. Lusitania became a rallying cry for the war effort. An official inquiry was opened within days. It was led by Lord Mersey, the same judge who had investigated the Titanic 3 years earlier. The hearings were held in London and Liverpool. Survivors, officers, and naval experts testified. Captain William Turner faced heavy criticism. He had followed Admiralty orders, but had received no naval escort and no accurate intelligence about U-boat activity. Turner's ship had been slowed to conserve coal and was not zigzagging, a standard evasive maneuver. When questioned, he replied, "I received no instructions to zigzag, none." The inquiry concluded that the primary cause was a German torpedo, followed by a second internal explosion. The reason for that second blast remained classified. The report praised the crew and passengers for bravery and blamed Germany for the deaths. No mention was made of the ship's secret cargo. Behind closed doors, the Admiralty knew more. Documents showed that Lusitania had been listed as an auxiliary cruiser, authorized to carry military supplies. When the report was published, those details were omitted. The official record ended with one sentence: the loss of life was due to an inhuman act of the enemy. The tragedy was immediately used as a tool of war. British newspapers printed drawings of women and children drowning, with slogans demanding revenge. In the United States, posters appeared showing the sinking liner beneath the words. Public opinion shifted sharply. Before May 1915, most Americans opposed involvement in the European War. After the attack, support for military action began to grow. By 1917, the sinking of the Lusitania was still cited in speeches calling for U.S. entry into the conflict. For Germany, the attack proved costly. Neutral nations condemned the use of unrestricted submarine warfare. Even within the German Navy, some officers questioned the order to strike passenger ships. Commander Walter Schwieger, who had fired the fatal torpedo, was later killed in 1917 when his next submarine, U-88, struck a mine. His logbook of the Lusitania attack was recovered and verified as authentic. The wreck remained untouched for decades. Diving expeditions in the 1950s and later in the 1980s confirmed the presence of explosive cargo in forward holds, supporting theories of a secondary detonation. The wreck of RMS Lusitania rests about 11 miles 18 kilometers off the coast of Ireland, near Kinsale, at a depth of roughly 93 meters. For years, it was considered too deep for conventional diving. In 1935, the British government officially declared the site a war grave. In 1982, American diver and author Robert Ballard, who would later discover the Titanic, surveyed the area using sonar and remotely operated cameras. The hull lay on its starboard side, the bow section heavily damaged. The pattern of destruction confirmed that a second internal explosion had occurred immediately after the torpedo strike. Tests later found traces of gun cotton and ammunition residue inside the forward cargo holds. That evidence supported Germany's wartime claim. The liner had indeed been carrying contraband munitions. Still, the human tragedy remained the focus. More than 100 people had died in less than 20 minutes. Their names are inscribed on memorials in Liverpool, New York, and Cobh, Ireland. Many families never received the bodies of their relatives. The cold Atlantic became their resting place. The Lusitania changed the rules of war at sea. After 1915, public outrage forced Germany to temporarily suspend unrestricted submarine attacks on passenger vessels. But by 1917, the policy returned, and the United States finally entered the war. The deaths of American citizens aboard the Lusitania were cited directly in President Woodrow Wilson's address to Congress. Historians continue to debate whether the British Admiralty used the ship as bait to influence American opinion. Declassified documents show that senior officials knew about U-boat warnings but chose not to recall the liner. To this day, the full naval files remain partially redacted. Modern divers have revealed the hull slowly collapsing under pressure, the brass nameplate still visible on the seabed. Artifacts recovered, children's shoes, tableware, and coins, are displayed in museums as silent witnesses. 1 century later, the Lusitania still represents a turning point, the moment when civilian life and total war collided on open water. The ocean floor off Ireland holds what remains of that day: twisted steel, broken china, and the memory of nearly 2,000 souls. The sea keeps its secrets, but history remembers the sound of a single torpedo and the ship that sank faster than the Titanic.